Hey, Rachel, how did that bike ride go?
That bike ride went awesome, and I've done another one since then last night in Parksville in the hail on hills from Parksville through to Nanoose and back and along the water there. It's going well, but there are 3 times a week trial rides now.
Ouch.
Yeah, and then they'll announce the team this 6th, 7th, or 8th of next month, and then it will remain 3 rides a week until the 2-week ride. So I might have underestimated, they say, oh, it's just like riding a bike. No, it's just like riding a bike. This is something else altogether. But it's good. It's my road to 50 will be paved with chamois and chamois butter and stuff I never wanted to know about in this world. So
you mean the road to 40?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the West Coast Committee meeting for Wednesday, April 13th. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 0900 hours this morning and recognize that we are coming from New Chalnooth territories from Tlaloquet, the Toquat Nation, and Boyet, and others within our community. Just a notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube and the regional district website. Now I'd like to introduce the directors. My name is Cal Roberts. I'm the chairman for the West Coast Committee. Attending online are Rochelle Cole from Ucluelet, Kirsten Johnson from the Toquat Nation, Tom Steer from Tofino, and I understand that one of our other directors is coming in from Ucluelet to attend our meeting this afternoon. Also today at the board meeting with me is Daniel Salen, our CAO, and Wendy Thompson, our deputy CAO, if you like. Here taking notes and staying with us. Next item is the approval of agenda. Could I have a motion to approve, including any late items? And I don't know that there are any. Nothing. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rochelle, and second by Kirsten. Very nice, thank you. Next item is West Coast Committee meeting of March the 2nd, 2022. And the motion is that the minutes of the West Coast Committee meeting held on March 2nd, 2022 be received. Thank you, Tom, and seconded by Kirsten. Thank you, Kirsten. Next item on the agenda is petitions, delegations, and presentations. And normally we allow a 10-minute maximum. And today we have Myrna Moore, Senior Government Relations Manager, Kaylin Sanders, Regional Operations Manager, Melissa Coates from Transit Planner, and BC Transit regarding update on the West Coast Committee. Thank you, Myrna, and please take it away.
Thank you very much. And I do want to say that I will be here solo. My other 2 partners have other commitments that they couldn't make, so their apologies. So yes, I basically want to give an update on the budget to begin with. And as you know, in late February, the province of BC tabled their budget. And this budget would allow BC Transit and our partners to continue to provide safe and reliable service and demonstrates that public transit remains a priority in our communities. Everybody knows about how we've been working through the last 2 years of pandemic, so I won't go into big details on that at this point. It certainly has impacted our transit ridership across the board. I think on average, the systems that are established are averaging about 70% of pre-COVID ridership, so that we're starting to see some recovery coming back. The budget that was tabled for $140 million, the operating grant, is basically this year to maintain essential service levels for the 2022-23 fiscal year. And it's expected that capacity within most of the established systems can accommodate additional growth in the absence of service expansions. So basically, the province is seeing, with the pandemic and with ridership recovery still being around 70%, that the established services across the province would be able to look at potential optimization of existing hours and services and be able to reallocate from basically some areas within the system to better performing routes and make some gains on that. I understand certainly that Tofino Ucluelet service plan is not a yet established system. So you're very unique in that sense. And so I understand completely how unique you are with the budget that has come forward. So basically this year, the province has determined that no expansions will occur in 22-23. But we do receive confirmation of provincial funding on an annual basis. And as you may know, we build a new 3-year expansion initiative cycle every year. And we are in that process right now. We've worked with your staff to bring forward the same request that would be billed into a service plan that goes to the province at the end of this year for them to again provide their budget announcement in February 23. In the meantime, we are still working with the service plan. We're looking at fare strategies for your service. We are looking at infrastructure needs within that service, so work is still going on. And then at a provincial level, some of the major innovative projects that we're working on across the board for the province is to advance our low carbon fleet program, looking at expanding the smart bus technology, where we're implementing the automated vehicle locator system in 19 more systems this year, where customers can look on their phone and find out when the bus in real time is coming to the next stop. We are looking at advancements in electronic fare collection so that people will be able to pay their fare through a credit card or their cell phone. And we're also looking at improvements to operations and maintenance facilities and exchanges around the province. So those are pieces as well that would benefit the Tofino Ucluelet service when we get it launched. So again, I want to emphasize that we are speaking with your staff and building the next 3-year expansion plan, and we'll see that that goes forward again to the province. I'm definitely advocating for the Tofino Ucluelet service as a net new service, and you are very unique in that sense, where other systems that have been established for several years have the ability to reallocate and improve. We need to get your base service started. So I definitely advocate with our internal and external team on that piece. So I just want to stop at that point and see if there's any questions at all.
Yeah, thanks for that, Myrna. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, thank you, Myrna. Just two questions. One, in our last update, there was some procurement issues with the fleet, and that the commencement of services, I believe the timeframe was early 2023, roughly January. Is that going to be affected at this point? And then I'll have a follow-up question for you after.
So thank you. That's a good question. When we do these 3-year transit improvement program initiative cycle, that all does build into bus ordering. And we certainly have seen this year a number of supply issues for various parts and materials, including vehicles. So you're right. Had we received funding for expansion in this past February, it was deemed that the vehicle delivery would have been January 23, with how long it would take to order and build and deliver. Without the expansion approval, we're estimating, again, with this new cycle, that it would potentially be September 23. So it would still be in your 23 calendar year, but we are now needing those several months to rebuild the service plan and to re-ask the province to provide funding for expansion.
Great, and through the chair, just a follow-up onto that. So we're at best guess estimates, we would be looking maybe commencement of services in fall of 2023.
That's correct. That's correct. So once we hear in February 23 that the province has blessed expansion again, we would then be building implementation plans from that point on. So that's generally 6, 7, 8 months. So implementing, marketing, making sure that the service plan, which we will update with some details this summer to make sure everything's ready to go, bus stops, et cetera, would all be ready for an implementation date for September 23.
Okay, and that was my, through the chair again, that was follow up again in terms of the infrastructure issues, in terms of bus stops and those that similar as you just pointed out. The other question was the servicing ability. You were looking at a location for that. Is that still those types of servicing plan? That work is still continuing, obviously, to that point. I just then a quick follow up. Is there anything at the regional district level as directors that that you could see a benefit for us to help expedite or to be proactive in this process? Is there anything essentially that we can do that will help you in further advocating for the service on the West Coast here?
Every contribution of excitement towards getting this on the ground is appreciated. So sure, from your angle, just to make sure that the communication is robust and we're all working together to express the absolute need for this service, and the province, again, from my perspective, I keep wanting to say that this net new service fits in a category above all the rest, because you need a base to work from before you can improve it. So yes, agreed. I would say keep the conversation going, keep it robust, and share the information with your colleagues.
Wonderful, thank you. I appreciate that, and I see most of staff is online here, so I'm sure they've heard those comments as well. Thank you, Myrna.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom, and thanks, Myrna. So I guess from my perspective, bottom line, before we have full service on the West Coast could be, and I think full service with everything in place would probably be 3 to 5 years. Is that correct?
Full service? What do you mean by full service?
Well, buses in operation, everything established, the facility for doing maintenance and repairs and so on and so forth.
We're working on all those pieces right now, and ideally what we would like to do is make sure that we have a secure plan, that those would be in place by the time funding gets its final blessing. So again, if in February 23 at the next budget cycle for the province, they come forward with their matching dollars for the local partners' dollars, I would like to be able to say that we will be in a place potentially, if all of the infrastructure works out, to still consider implementing the service in September 23. It does take 2 to 3 years to fully mature, but I would like to plan for having buses in service in September, giving the funding and infrastructure approvals.
Well, thanks for that, Myrna. Yeah, I guess we'll all keep our fingers crossed and hopefully that we'll do whatever we can to have that service implemented. And Rochelle, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to be very clear when I go back to my other table, in that I hear lots of ifs and when, and so we could actually be in the same conversation this time next year. Is that correct?
So it could be correct. Every year we work with our local government partners to understand what they are interested in improvements for their transit system. Yours is brand new. We know that everybody wants it. You have come to the table and made it very clear that you would like to see this service implemented. We have that conversation with all of our local government partners across the board outside of TransLink, and we build all of that information to one service plan that goes at the end of the calendar year to the province to say, basically, like I just said, we have a $140 million operating grant that we receive from the province. So in this process, when we refresh this cycle, what we call TIPS, we ask the same thing, and we are waiting for the province to match the funds that you have secured within the regional district. This process this year is certainly not what we've seen in the past 5 to 7 years. I believe the pandemic has had a big impact on where the province needs to determine the allocation of the budget every year. So to answer your question, the process will happen again. And we definitely would hope that the province, having had this 1 year of optimization as opposed to expansion, would do the trick. And then in February of 23, when they announce their budget, they would determine what our operating grant will be for that next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rochelle. Are there any other comments from anybody? Kirsten, you're all right with everything that's going on there? Yeah. All right, thank you. Thanks, Myrna. Appreciate it, and we look forward to any new updates you have.
Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. The next item on the agenda is a request for decision with regards to the Long Beach Airport contamination. And Jenny, oh, there you are, smiling face. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So the Long Beach contamination issue, we were at the West Coast Committee in October speaking about this. So we became aware of a large volume of asbestos when we were doing a stage 1 contamination investigation. This was in an area that we were potentially looking at leasing out. And so obviously that lease has been put on hold and any work in that area has been put on hold. And we're trying to look at how we deal with this situation. At that time, we suggested that we connect with the federal minister of transport, as well as our MP. And we did that. We sent a letter to them explaining the situation and saying, you know, that we received this land from you as a transfer, and we're hoping that you guys will, what we feel is fulfill your obligations for cleaning up the contamination that we've found that wasn't anticipated at the time of transfer. So we did send that letter off. We've received an email back saying that they believe that that's our obligation to fulfill and to deal with that contamination. So we have a few options moving forward. One of them that we're recommending to the committee is that we set up a meeting, so staff can facilitate a meeting with our MP, Gord Johns, and the Minister of Transport to really discuss options for remediating this issue. we feel that, there's mutual benefit at all levels of government for this to be addressed. And there's a lot of challenges for the ACRD to try to address this independently. So we're recommending that we move forward with facilitating a meeting to try and discuss this and collaborate to resolve the issue. We also have the option to pursue a legal review and really start down the legal option of sort of arguing whose responsibility is this as per the contract agreement. We estimate about $2,500 for an initial legal review, and we do have funds available if we wanted to do that. The other option is we can just decide to move forward on this. So we can decide, okay, yes, this is our responsibility, and start developing a plan to basically tackle this. And that's definitely an option that we're looking at doing. And then of course, the other option, which is we can ignore it as option 3. So I'll leave it at that if you have some questions. But again, staff are recommending that we facilitate a meeting.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jenny. So are there any questions from any of the members? I'm sure there are. Tom, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it. The option 3 was very interesting. Yeah, would there be some mutual benefits, as you pointed out to all of us, but would it be helpful in your, I think we'll probably proceed with the recommendation. Would there be benefit, though, to give the green light that you did have legal opinion before going into those conversations, just so you had a little more, I hate to use the word ammunition, but a little more constructive information and data to bring forward in those negotiations with our MP and the minister?
Through the chair, we considered that, and we always have that available to us. I think that there's a small risk if we do go ahead and get a legal opinion that it doesn't come back in our favor. And so at this stage, again, in the spirit of collaboration, and I think that everyone around the table wants us to be able to solve this, it might be an easier solution if we just work collaboratively. And if that doesn't become fruitful, then then we go through the legal opinion to see where we're at.
Great, thank you. So excellent. And I'll see if there's other directors have any other questions. Otherwise, I can read the motion. Chair, seeing none, I can read the motion that the West Coast Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to coordinate a political meeting with the delegation of the ACRD Board, MP Gord Johns, and the Honorable Omar Alghabra, Minister of Transport, to discuss options regarding the remediation of asbestos at the Long Beach Airport.
And Rochelle, are you seconding that? Thank you for that. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And Jenny, thank you very much for all the work you've done on this. I read through this report, and as I said to Mr. Salen this morning, that it seems to me somewhere in my memory and recorded history that there was a letter from the federal government accepting all responsibility for that. So I think the work you guys have done is tremendous, and hopefully we can get this resolved through simpler means, such as a meeting that you've recommended. So thank you for that. Go ahead, Mr. Salen.
I just wanted to add one element to that, as well as is part of the approach which you've just passed, is also having the discussion with the ministry around grant opportunities. And the reason why we supported the direction that this is going in is that if we can, under the intent of the agreement, work together and then secure a grant for a brownfield redevelopment site, then we could possibly have all interested stakeholders at that site doing a full remediation and a project to move forward. So it's a way of identifying targeted funds that would create the win-win, as opposed to locking into conflict around who should do what under the existing agreement. And that FCM grant, there is currently a grant that's would be due at the end of June. So Terry has her staff taking a look at those details.
Yeah, thank you for that, Daniel. Is there any other comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. The next request for decision is with regards to the West Coast curbside collection to include the Taloquet First Nation and include that government. And I guess, Jenny, you're on again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll actually be speaking to the next list of reports related to solid waste. And I wanted to say just on that point, Michael McGregor has been doing all the heavy lifting on the contamination issue for us. And although I'm speaking to these next reports, it is the solid waste staff who have really been doing so much work to get some progress done on the West Coast. And I'm just giving them some more time to continue to work. And so I'll speak to the reports, but by all means, I'm not doing all the work on these. So it is a great team that we have. That being said, this project in particular has been an excellent collaboration. So in 2019, we started up a West Coast working group. We had members from the district of Ucluelet and Tofino and First Nations and parks. We really had everyone on the West Coast sort of come together to talk about what do we want to do on the West Coast for solid waste. And we've been making a lot of progress in that regard. At that time, when we first started up, the Ucluelet and Taloquet staff sort of said, you know, we would love to have recycling in our communities and what can we look at? And so we talked about expanding the current system, which is recycling and garbage collection to include them. We talked initially with Recycle BC. Everyone said, yeah, that seems like an easy win. And so we've been moving forward on that. And then at the same time, we brought on the organics diversion and how that's going to be implemented on the West Coast and looking at 3Stream. So we still do meet. We have these working group meetings. And so as we've been working on staff level, there's still been interest. And so instead of just going ahead with either just recycling or recycling and waste, we're like, okay, well, do we want to go all 3Stream? And so in March, we did an updated invitation letter and we've received back confirmation from Ucluelet government and Taloquet First Nation that they do want to. So this is great. We've got that written confirmation. In that process, we are looking at how do we set this up for success. So currently in the communities, it's centralized waste collection, and we're doing quite a bit of a shift to curbside. And one of the ideas that we're hoping will unfold is that we will actually transition Hitatsu, Esawista and Taistanis over in September. So if the organics facility construction is on schedule and we get our carts delivered on time, then what we would look to do is actually in these 3 communities, we will do the 3Stream before we do the rest of the system, which is scheduled for November. That'll allow us to have lots of time for education and implementation and switching over. And then also it will allow the contractor to get used to doing the 3Stream collection before it gets expanded to the rest of the coast. So we're pretty excited about our plan, and everyone seems very excited about the move forward. We know that we're going to have to invest a lot of time and energy to make sure that it goes smoothly, but we feel like we have had some really good success in the city. And so we kind of might have some tips and tricks in place. So we think we can do this well. Education is going to be a really big component for this. So we are allocating funds specifically for in-community educators. We have Surfrider who provides education, who's going to be helping with 3Stream. They're going to be doing sort of a train the trainer or support level for the in-community educators. So yeah, I think that is, and as far as costs go, then maybe that's the other component. So we need to now develop service agreements for this. So we're working again on staff level. We have a draft agreement. We're just working on language. Cost-wise, it is just an at-cost service. So the cost, which would be the same price, we're estimating about $200 with the 3Stream, is really just the cost of the contract collection, the carts, and then the tipping fees. And any like a small amount of administration. So it's just covering all of those costs. So we're looking at $200 per property, and we would do that via a service agreement because we won't be billing individually. It'll just be one agreement, one bill that goes to the communities. Yeah. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jenny. I read through the report and it seems fairly detailed. I have one question, and I know that WildSafe BC is involved, and of course the concern there is the bear issue on the West Coast and the various communities. Just a quick question, are the organic bins going to have self-locking lids on them?
Excellent question. So both for the West Coast, we think that it's important that there is bear wildlife protection or resistance, because you can't call it proofing, because trust me, give bear enough time, they'll get into anything. But the wildlife resistance hardware will be on both the organics and the garbage. We're not putting it on the recycling because really the recycling is very little attractant and we need people to be cleaning it, otherwise it's garbage anyhow. So, but for both of those carts, for every single cart that goes out, further on the agenda, we have the bylaw, and we're being very explicit about this. We know that we know we have bigger issues on the West Coast with wildlife, with bears, and we have had some really good progress with our WildSafe coordinators, and so they've been really helpful in giving us tips. So we think that we're probably leading the edge on this one where it comes to implementing a service with WildSafe, like reducing wildlife conflict in mind.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's from my perspective, having been involved with it through the regional district of Nanaimo, that education is a key factor, and I'm glad to hear that we're starting out early with the 2 First Nations areas, and that's super. So, any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, maybe just a quick comment to follow up on the education component. Jody Frank came to the district of Tofino and gave an excellent educational opportunity for the district, for staff that were there and for council. And it was highly, everyone was very glad of that and very much stressed how the importance of that education component for that. And so I just wanted to thank Jenny and her staff once again for the incredible job that they're doing on this file.
Thanks very much for that, Tom. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll read out the request that the West Coast Committee recommend that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve entering into service agreements with the Taloquit First Nation and the Kuthat government for the provision of 3-stream curbside collection of waste in the communities of Gitatsu, Esawista, and Payastanas. Have a seconder? Thank you, Rochelle. Appreciate that. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you for that. Thanks, Jenny. And next item is the West Coast Recycling Depot's public concern on our reduction. And is that you again, Jenny? I guess it is. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Chair. So at our last meeting, this was identified, and we've definitely heard public concerns about the recycling depot and the recent changes. So with a transition from one contract operator to another, we've definitely seen a reduction in hours, especially at the Include Recycling Depot. We definitely have concerns from a staff perspective because with reduced hours, reduced access, reduced material acceptance, this has the potential to have a negative impact on our diversion rates, which goes against what we're trying to work towards. So it's a challenging situation for us. So the ACRD is responsible for solid waste in the region, but we don't necessarily have a direct control over recycling. And I'll do the complicated nature of recycling in BC. So I'll do a 101. Sometimes, even us in the industry are like, oh, and who's responsible for that again? So I will try. Essentially, it's a stewardship program. And so the intent is that it is a producer pay. So if you ordered a box of razors from Amazon, as they come across the border into BC, the company, it would be Amazon at that time, they give some money to, and it's Recycle BC. We have legislation that requires this, for that material to be collected, transported, processed, completely recycled. And this is the intent, and it is a wonderful concept. And BC is leading the charge on this methodology. And it works well in some places, and it has challenges in others. So in this situation, we'll just talk specifically about the West Coast. On the West Coast, the ACRD collects recycling, curbside recycling. We receive money from Recycle BC for that. And there are also depots, and those recycling depots are also locations where people can drop off materials, and Recycle BC contracts that directly to the private company, and that's Ozard Industries, or Ozard Environmental right now, who operates those depots. There's also another company that deals with transportation, and anyhow, this big bucket of money that Recycle BC collects is intended to pay for all of these different ways to collect recycling. So the ACRD is not involved in the recycling depots. Whereas in the Alberni Valley, we happen to be the person who operates those depots. And that's where there's quite a difference. So Recycle BC can contract with whoever's going to operate those depots. Sometimes it's the local government, sometimes it is not. In this situation, although we've been receiving feedback and we've heard it here at this table, we've been talking with Recycle BC. So we are doing our role as far as facilitating and trying to make some changes. We're running into some challenges because Recycle BC is not hearing these complaints directly. And so we feel that writing a letter to explain this from our board and expressing the challenges and concerns that we're having might be helpful. We've also put in the report specifically the direct contact information because it is Recycle BC that technically contracts the recycling depots on the West Coast. We think it would be very helpful if they can hear how the current situation is having a negative impact on the community. We are more concerned with Euclid because it has temporarily been classified as a satellite depot, which means that the curbside materials don't need to be collected there. So that means it can be just styrofoam, glass, and plastic, flexible plastic, right? So anything that goes into the curb doesn't need to be collected there. It's quite a drive to go to Tofino, to go to the other recycling depot or Port Alberni. Those would be the two other alternative locations. And the landfill right now, we have not set up those stations because for the most part, the landfill is not a convenient location for either Tofino or Euclid. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to collect those materials there, although we could. But we've talked about that in the past. And again, through the working group, we really understand that that's not really how it works on the West Coast, right? Like if you're in Tofino, you access your services there. If you're in Euclid, you access your services there. The landfill might be convenient for people from Tofino. It is highly inconvenient for people from Euclid. You'd rather go to really Port Alberni if you're going somewhere, right? Just as far as transfer goes. So as we envision things on the West Coast, we try very hard to basically work within what works for the community. So we've been talking with Recycle BC. We've expressed our concerns. We've also, because we do work with Ozark, because they're our collection company as well, we've talked to them and expressed our concerns. They really are having a challenge to make the system financially viable for those recycling depots. So when Recycle BC sets rates for what they pay for a baled cubic meter of any type of recycling, it is based on the average in the province, and that can make sense in highly dense populated areas, and it can be much more challenging in remote communities. So I think, again, like there needs to be, and they do sometimes with pressure, look at unique situations in remote areas, right? We ourselves operating the Banfield transfer station really do a lot of hard negotiations on, the standard model doesn't fit everywhere, and it doesn't always do that. So we might have to continue down this path, but we think the next best step is really to make sure Recycle BC is hearing the negative impacts, because we don't feel that they're hearing it or are looking to make any changes at the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jenny. I know concerns of traveling to carry some of these issues that what ends up happening is people start dumping them in the garbage, which is really clearly not what we want. I know on the east side of the island, similar situation where from Oceanside residents have to transport these non-collectible items up to Courtney or all the way down to Nanaimo, south of Nanaimo. So it's important. I know it's an educational thing, and until such time as we get that resolved through Recycle BC, it's going to be a bit problematic. So we just have to hope that residents are going to be mindful of the situation and that they're able to, maintain and keep these other unrecyclable objects until such time as they accumulate enough to take them to the sites. So I see Tom, you got your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Jenny, through the chair. So two things, Jenny. The obviously the direct contact route for most people. This was on. It was a letter of correspondence council meeting last night. concerned citizens, and I've had many phone calls at home. So it's certainly, I know Ucluelet is even in a tougher position here, but it's definitely a concern on the coast or in Tofino. So two things. One is the direct contact route is a little more complex for citizens because they go to the local government. As you pointed out, you need a PhD to figure out the Recycle BC kind of matrix. And so I'm just wondering, it is a little more difficult for a private citizen if there was a way that we might be able to consolidate that kind of correspondence and deliver it, maybe at the municipal level. And the other question is the Recycle BC rates to the service provider, the service contractor, in our case, Ozark. Is there any way for us at the ACRD to to open that conversation up with Recycle BC to adjust the rates for our service contractor here to make it a little more financially viable for them?
Through the chair, so we would be happy to be the conduit that moves the information through to Recycle BC. We've listed the direct information there, and by all means, if you're receiving written complaints and concerns, we will take them and we will pass them directly to Recycle BC. I'm happy to do that, but we need to have some clarity on how much control the ACRD has over the situation, and that goes to your second question, which is how much can we have no control over what the rates are, but of course we can encourage, we can explain, we can explain the hardship and the impacts. And I want to continue to monitor the data because I think data speaks volumes. So we're 2 months in and we've got very little data. The other situation is that there's two distinct seasons on the West Coast, and I'm much more worried about what's going to happen in the summer and the impacts that we're going to see. So we're seeing just a tiny bit, which also could just be that people are sort of holding on to things. But then what are we going to see when we get into the deep summer? So this is not something that I think might get resolved quickly, but from our perspective, we will continue to help in every way that we can to make sure that the communities are getting good access to recycling. We're seeing such good rates on the West Coast. When we originally did our landfill composition study, like the big highlight, the big win was residential people in Ucluelet and Tofino are the best recyclers in the entire region. So we want to keep those rates high and obviously continue to increase diversion. I think with the other, moving piece is that we will have those big new recycling carts, which might also help to collect some of that material.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. And just that was a major concern, as you pointed out clearly, the distinct seasons that we have here and with the oncome of summer, especially at the commercial with our bed and breakfast and our vacation rentals. And this was anticipated to just be exacerbated on the coast here. So thanks for recognizing that. I appreciate the effort.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? How's it going in Ucluelet, Rochelle? Are you getting any heat over these hours of 10 to 3 operation on Wednesday?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. And anyway, let's move along. But first, recommendation that the West Coast Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to send a letter to Recycle BC expressing concern over the reduction of hours and services at the recycling depots in Ucluelet and Tofino. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Rochelle and Kirsten and Tom, everybody. All those in favor? Thank you for that. Thanks again, Jenny. Next item is item D, request for decision with regards to the West Coast Collection of Waste Material Regulation and Charges bylaw. Is that you again, Jenny? You're a busy girl. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is so much, this one especially is so much work, not just from my staff, from every single department has been very helpful in putting this bylaw together. So we have an existing bylaw that regulates collection for the Alberni Valley and the West Coast, and it was put into place in 2008. We obviously, as we move to 3Stream, we need to change that so that we have regulations that are specific to the new system and how we're going to use that system. So when we started down this path, we did some research. We looked at other regional districts to find a really good template, and we ended up settling on the regional district of Nanaimo as our starting template for this new curbside collection bylaw. We talked a bit about the Wild Safe BC program. That was a big component for us. So we really worked with them to make sure that the language that we put in here is going to really support and increase how we move forward on the coast with that. The other key component is looking at the multifamily and strata units. So because of just the way things are on the West Coast, it makes sense for us to do that collection as part of one route. And so in the past, we have allowed stratas to come in, and now we've just got clear language that gives us the authority to do that and to deal with them coming on board and how they will pay, and if they don't pay, how that will get dealt with. So we've basically fixed that loophole in there. We have requirements for the security of the bear enclosures and just the response time on that. We also have requirements for some of the issues that have been happening, a little bit about, you know, the illegal camping and just a lot of the issues and the fallout with that, with the garbage and infrastructure and issues. And so we've put language in there that is more than just about the curbside collection program. It's really comprehensive for the whole West Coast, and it has some just standard language that requires you to manage your garbage, manage it correctly, and it gives us the authority to come in and do something about that if you're not doing that. Also, we've had a lot of gains with Surfrider and their ocean friendly program. So they work with businesses, and in one of the big components of that is they'll say, hey, okay, great, like what are you doing to be ocean friendly? A waste management plan that shows how they're diverting as much material as possible is one of the ways that they can get this ocean friendly certification. We think that's fantastic, and we have put it in that for those businesses that aren't just doing this as a progressive action, we can require that of them. So for any building, whether it's residential or commercial or just any land, we can say, hey, like you clearly have a problem there. You need to be managing your waste. Tell us how you're doing it, and tell us how you are diverting all of the materials, because that's what we want to see. So we think that that's a really good tool for us in the future. With all of this, there's definitely deterrence, which is fines in there. And so we don't intend for this to become a bylaw ticket heavy issue. When we've implemented the 3Stream in the city, we are educating. That is the key, because we want compliance. So the tickets are there as a tool. If we can't get compliance through education, through warning again and re-educating. So we really don't see a lot of bylaw time in this, but we also are going to recommend that we update the bylaw notice enforcement ticketing bylaw to give authority to our community services staff, because it is much more an education component than a bylaw enforcement issue, because it's really, we're trying to change human behavior. And so we're going to give the hopefully delegate authority to some of our staff so we can work through that if we need to. As mentioned earlier, our cost that we're estimating is about $200 per household, and we do have different cart size capacity. So if you want to double your garbage size, it is, I think it's $350. And if you want to double both your organics and your garbage, then it's $400 per year. And so we've sort of based that on what the cost we anticipate for the service. We have fees for different cart replacement and administration for switch out. So you've seen in the papers, we're promoting, you know, the default sizes are this. And if you want something other than that size, like a little bigger, let us know ahead of time. And so we don't want to be doing a lot of cart switch out. That was one of the tips we got from other areas with doing this program, is like really try to give people, you know, the appropriate cart size up front and discourage them switching it out, right? So we think that we've done pretty good. We have Jody, she's been out there doing actual audits and ride-alongs with the drivers. So hopefully we'll have that nailed. So when we go to adopt this bylaw at the board, assuming we get committee support to move forward, we'll be bringing forward this bylaw for 3 readings. We'll also be bringing forward our existing bylaw to amend it, because it will still stay effective for the Beaver Creek area. So we're just going to do an amendment to pull the West Coast out. And again, we're going to look at doing an amendment for the bylaw ticketing the bylaw for ticketing so that we can allow for authority for this and also that we can enforce the regulations that are in here. I think that's all that I have. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jenny. I have a question, and that is with regards to the map that I looked at with regards to the service area. That encompasses a lot of areas such as Muscle Beach, the Uplands, Salmon Beach, out to Makoa. I don't know if they're going to be involved in any of this or not, but do you have any comment or concerns over some of these areas, how they're going to be handled? Are they going to be on their own? And yeah, anyway, just general question. Thank you.
Excellent question. So we've had to basically make the service area the entire electoral area for the West Coast. When we update the Port Alberni one, which might be in a year or so, we're going to be looking to do the same, because some of the regulations in here are going to be wide ranging. They are just, everyone has to be responsible to take care of their garbage, to not create a nuisance with their waste or an attractant for wildlife. And so some of the regulations in here are just very broad. You need to be responsible for your waste. Specifically when it comes to collection, there's no intention for us to provide curbside collection to these services. So in the language, in the detailed language, we actually identify who gets collection based on the language. And it is, in the past, we've been very explicit about where we draw the lines, but even within those lines, there's so many properties that do and don't get the curbside collection. So for simplicity, we've just done the service area is that it's the entire area. So whether you get service or not is whether you're eligible. So if you're eligible, it means you're a resident, and it means that we can service you. And if we can service you, that can be assessed by the solid waste manager. So because some properties, just due to their distance, they're out on a logging road, like we can't service you. It's not doable. And so the areas that we currently provide service to are the areas that we will be providing service to under this new bylaw. If there's someone who would like to come into the program and get service, they write us a letter and say, hey, we'd really like service. And we look at them and we say, okay, let's see, does that make sense? Can we, should we? And we let them know if we can add them to the service or not.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I can read the recommendation. I just want to commend you once again on a well-researched and well thought out, and the emphasis on the education rather than on the punitive levels, I think, has shown through your work in the Valley that these types of educational processes, you pay out $1 for the education saves you 10 in the enforcement area. And we know the realities of enforcement is much more difficult than the education piece. So I really commend you on that. Without further ado, I can read the motion as recommended that the West Coast Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors give 3 readings in adoption of bylaw R1036, West Coast Collection of Waste Materials Regulations and Charges 2022.
Thank you for that, seconder. Thank you, Kirsten and Rochelle. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next item is reports from ex officio member updates. First, Pacific Rim Park update. Do we have anything? I thought I saw Karen there. Karen, do you have any comment?
Hi, Cal. The only thing I will update on is, as everybody's probably read, we are going to be doing a dog closure on Comers Beach effective this weekend, right through to October, which is our shorebird migration. This is really a pilot year to see how a closure will help facilitate our shorebird migration period and protect the shorebirds that are harvesting and migrating in that area. So we're going to be doing a lot of monitoring as well as enforcement. So there will be full enforcement occurring at that closure area to see how people are adhering to it. If there's any issues that we're seeing, there's going to be a lot of education and prevention messages occurring over the next coming months. But that will be a big shift in the park reserve area here in the Long Beach unit. So that's one big item that I'd like to bring forward, Cal.
Thank you very much, Karen. Tom, you have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Appreciate that. And just for clarification, that is a complete dog closure, not just the leash component. That is a complete dog, in essence, ban on the beach. And I was just, we've been having this discussion in Tofino about off-leash dogs, as I'm sure you're probably aware. And one of the interesting things that has come up in those conversations is often that not only is it dogs, but it's actually the human presence on the beach that disrupts those. And I know that would be a much more difficult thing, but it was interesting to note that, in fact, many of the observations were just the sheer number of people that were disturbing the shorebirds on our local beaches here. So I just wanted to comment on that, and I'll be very curious to see when you look at your data at the end of October to see what results come out of that. So thank you. Appreciate the update.
Yeah, that's a good comment. We did do a lot of research, and we had a university student actually spend a few years in the area, and it came out that removing the dogs would actually prevent and support the shorebirds more than just the people. So we kind of weighed that option, but I'd be happy if you'd like, we can have Yuri present back in November or December, just the results, and he can show the different variations if you'd like.
Good news. Thank you. Rochelle, you were going to make a comment.
I'm just curious about enforcement and what that entails or looks like.
That will be law enforcement officers going out onto the beaches and monitoring and observing what's happening, but also charging people. There will be no leniencies. It's not a warning. They will be charged.
Nice. And so then that's a fine, obviously a ticket, a fine. Do we know what that looks like? What size of a fine that is?
It starts at $56 and can go up to $25,000.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that update. That's it's good news. Good news. Thanks, Karen. Any other comments? None. The next ex officio member would be a How's It First Nation update. Is there anything out there? No other representation? Okay, thank you for that. Anyway, that's the recommendation is that the West Coast Committee receive. Oh, okay. Jim from Tilapia First Nation, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Really, our highlights were kind of a little bit on hold right now. We have our elections on May 12th, so we're in a little bit of a down period right now. But really, we're thumping along. We're really revisiting all our housing. That's a big priority for us. Other than that, things are going along quite well. Really nothing major to report. So
Great. Well, thank you, Jim. Much
you bet.
Go ahead.
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any member from Hespeut First Nation? Anybody there, Wendy? No, nothing. Anyway, finally, I'd make the recommendation that the West Coast Committee receive the verbal reports. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Kirsten. All those in favor? Thank you. Is there any late business? No late business, thank you. And question period, are there any questions or anything from the public?
No, there are no questions or comments from the public today.
All right, well, thank you. Nobody from Zoom or anything else. Anyway, finally, the motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Thank you. Oh, seconded by Kirsten and everybody in favor. Thank you. Cheers. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for attending.